I'm Jim Sharpe. Welcome to the AZ Political Podcast. Headline number one, President Joe Biden stepped away from his re-election campaign and declared that he wants his vice president, Kamala Harris, to replace him at the top of the Democratic ticket. Headline number two, less than 36 hours after that bombshell, Harris appeared to wrap up the nomination by securing the votes necessary of enough Democratic National Convention delegates, including the entirety of Arizona's delegation. And headline number three, appearing to be at the top of the list of potential running mates for Kamala Harris is the junior U.S. Senator from Arizona, Mark Kelly, who checks a lot of vice presidential boxes, including being from a swing state. And that brings me to my guest this week on the AZ Political Podcast, Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes.
Morning.
Morning. Thanks for joining us. So you were telling Jamie West and me on Arizona's Morning News just a couple of days ago that political party delegates from Arizona are not under a legal obligation to vote at the convention for the winner of our presidential preference election, in this case, Joe Biden. You happen to be a delegate, and
not anymore.
Oh, you decided you're not?
No. I'm still a delegate, but delegates are not under obligation anymore.
Oh, gotcha.
Because the president withdrew from the race.
Okay, gotcha.
So we are under obligation after the presidential preference election, unless the person withdraws, or there's a variety of other things set in statute. Okay. But now that one of those conditions has happened, then it's kind of technically open.
Okay, excellent. But you are still a delegate then. Okay.
I am a pleo, is what we call it.
Pleo.
Yeah, I'm a pledged elect because I'm an elected official. Mm-hmm. The party has its other status.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
pledged elected official. Okay.
Something like that. I don't know what the title is, but I'm one of them.
And you've decided that you're going to vote for Kamala Harris at the convention.
Yes, and if I could really just clarify that.
Please.
The convention nominates a candidate, mm-hmm. but because I'm also, and that's me as a Democrat and a Cleo, but because I'm Secretary of State, I will not be endorsing in that race in the fall. So I'm splitting some legal hairs here.
Yeah.
I get it, but I'm still a Democrat. I'm still dedicated to helping my party, and I know that there are all kinds of people in all kinds of parties who would do the exact same thing. I can separate my opinion from my duty.
Gotcha. Okay. But let's ask about this. Since the entire Arizona delegation has decided that they're going to do the same thing, they're going to vote to nominate Kamala Harris. Is this, as some people are suggesting, circumventing the process? I mean, there are some groups out there that are like, hey, we got to let this all play out.
Yeah, those groups are worried about our new presidential nominee. When you're talking about process, you're not talking about issues. Mm-hmm. When you're talking about rules, you're not talking about what's important to the American people. What's important to the American people, and by the way, this does all follow the rules, because as I indicated, when the actual nominee vacates for whatever reason, then the delegates can do what they want because that condition was met. So that's part of the rules. It's part of the process. So the folks that are trying to gaslight the American public by saying, oh, no, they're breaking the rules and this is unconstitutional, they're scared. They are scared to death that they're not going to be running against Joe Biden anymore. And this is me, the Democrat, talking, not the Secretary of State. Okay?
But some groups like Black Lives Matter have said, they're not necessarily super thrilled about Kamala Harris, probably because she put a lot of people behind bars when she was a prosecutor, and also,
I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion, right? And that's not shocking.
But I'm just asking you to explain to everybody why this is not circumventing the process.
Well, and I kind of just did. The process has rules for replacing folks. I mean, what if the president had passed away? Right. And he has a choice of whether or not he wants to continue on. Well, if you ask some
conspiracy theorists, he has. But.
Well, okay, I mean, that's... But here's the deal. There are these contingencies that are set up in the law, set up in the party rules. And remember, the reason in Arizona we call it a presidential preference election, because this is the preference.
Right.
Our primary automatically moves, the July 30th primary this year automatically moves those party nominees to the general election ballot. But the presidential preference election is only picking delegates to a convention. Right. That's not electing an actual political officer for an actual office.
Right.
So these rules are a little bit different. And look, in the Article 1 part of the Constitution, you have the legislature. They all fall under the same rules. The Article 2 presidency is a different office, it has different rules. The senators are not subjected to the Electoral College. The president is. The House of Representatives isn't necessarily bound by the 35 and older rule. The president is. So when you look at the nature of the office itself, we have rules that are different for this office. And I'm sorry that some people just don't bother reading the rules to know that there's nothing wrong right now.
Right. Let's say something crazy does happen. I mean, the convention is going to be in Chicago again, like it was in '68, which was the last time, we had a president stepping away.
50, how many years ago?
I know. Come on, I've got to put this in historical context.
I get
please.
it. Okay.
Help me out here a little bit. Right?
I don't want to be messing with your cornflakes here.
If something crazy does happen, and somebody else other than Kamala Harris ends up being nominated, you and I talked about this before too, and that is the process of getting that name on ballots across the state of Arizona.
Not a problem.
You feel completely confident that all 15 counties are going to have
it's not a problem.
It's not a problem names at all on their ballots.
So first of all, because of the shenanigans in Ohio that we can get into if you want, the delegates to the DNC are going to have a virtual vote. We had been planning this many months ago, so this is not new. The vote will already have taken place. The nominee will already be in place. Normally that happens on the floor. We're going to announce the votes on the floor, I think, at the convention. But the vote will already have taken place to meet some legal thing and avoid legal shenanigans that we're expecting from the Secretary of State in Ohio. Who is like way more political than a Secretary of State ought to be. And I would say that openly, and I'll say it right here. After that, then, the nomination will be made, I guess, pronounced, but it will already be official. That's going to happen before August 9th, which is the day that the electors to the Electoral College have to be named.
Right.
So remember, we're nominating a candidate that the electors will have to vote for. So it's not the name of the candidate that's necessary. It's the electors that are necessary within the rules. And people kind of forget this because we've short-circuited all these Byzantine processes, right? So you've got delegates to a convention. The convention then sends the nominee, but it's the electors who actually end up on the ballot. They have the power to cast that vote for the Electoral College. It's crazy complicated, right? But that's the American system. Right? Nobody said democracy was easy.
Yeah. Would you be for open primaries and including a presidential proper primary in Arizona?
That's a really interesting question that I'm going to skirt and avoid completely. And here's why. We actually have an initiative that's getting signatures verified in my office on the official side of things right now. That's
so you don't endorse a candidate, you're not going to...
It's calling for an open primary. Now, do I like the idea? I kind of dig the notion that the state taxpayers won't be paying for partisan primaries that are closed. I kind of like that idea generally. And there are some other things in that initiative. But, I'm not going to say yes to this right now and seem like I'm endorsing it because I've got to certify that one too. So I have my rules. I'm going to stick to my rules. I announced my rules a long time ago, and there's still going to be complaints, and that's fine.
Okay.
It's politics, right?
Yeah.
That's the show, right?
Exactly, right? Absolutely. So what happens if Mark Kelly, who, by the way, is at the top of the list of vice presidential possibilities right now, what happens if he actually accepts the nomination? Are federal office holders in Arizona held to the resign to run?
No. No, resign to run does not apply. So let's assume first that Vice President Harris nominates Senator Kelly to be her vice presidential running mate. Okay, that's number one thing, that hurdle that has to happen. Number two, then that ticket, which would be Harris Kelly, would have to win in November. Okay.
Right.
If they win that general election, then Senator Kelly would be looking at getting inaugurated in January as the vice president.
Right.
He wouldn't technically have to leave his office as U.S. Senator until then.
Gotcha.
But when he does resign under those preconditions, when he does resign, then that office will be vacated.
Right.
And
so let's talk about that process.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So the governor would appoint someone to that seat.
Yes.
That has to be from the same party.
Yes.
And in this case, the governor is of the same party, Democrats.
Yeah.
Would you ever encourage her to appoint herself so you can become governor?
That's a fun
Just throwing
scenario.
it out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, and while that is a possibility, and that's very flattering, thank you, there are a whole bunch of folks.
I don't know how flattering that is. It just looks like a bunch of inside machinations, right?
I mean, it is what it is. Look, the governor has the power to appoint anyone. The voters in Arizona appointed the governor to exercise that power. Mm-hmm. She can utilize it. That's just part of the rules. It's fair. And I know people say, oh, well, appointing yourself isn't classy or isn't this, isn't. Well, but it doesn't violate the rules.
Right.
If you don't want that to be the rule, change the rule. That's what democracy is about. It's the process. So she can appoint herself. She can appoint a whole host of people that have been talked about. And if she does appoint herself, then once she vacates the governor's office in that scenario, then I would end up becoming governor because I'm the lieutenant governor right now.
Right. Yeah. Would that be just completely weird?
I mean, I didn't.
That's like a Chris Farley question.
I ran. Okay, so it wouldn't be totally weird. It would be very odd because of the way that it happened, right? And look, when I ran for Secretary of State, I knew that there was a possibility that there could be an opening in the governor's office, and that I would end up, by operation of law, be elevated into that spot. I'm ready for it. I every once in a while think about it when I get my security briefings and my public safety briefings and things of this nature. But look, that's just a possibility, right? And it's one of the possible things that can happen because of this job, and that's why I ran, just in case. But I think the governor's, doing a good enough job, and we're all pretty happy here in Arizona, I think.
Okay. Was that an endorsement? A good enough job?
A good enough job.
If she runs for re-election, you have to retract that.
I mean,
I'm just kidding.
Look, the governor and I agree on a whole bunch of things, and there's a couple of things that we disagree on, and that's healthy, even within the party.
Sure.
But I think things are just fine at the state capitol, and I think the operations are all running smoothly.
So let's keep this scenario going, and not the scenario where you end up being governor necessarily, and wouldn't be against that. But
is that an endorsement?
I don't endorse candidates, nor ideas. No. If Senator Kelly becomes Vice President Kelly, when would be the next election to finish his term?
Yeah, that's a great one. So the senator was elected in
2022.
He was elected in 2022. That's right. He and I were on the same ticket for 6 years. So that means he would have skipped the 2024 cycle. He would have skipped the 2026 cycle, and he would have been up for re-election in 28 for that seat, which is currently the junior senator's seat. Right. Right now, there is a race for U.S. Senate for the other seat, the senior senator's seat. Right. So should Mark Kelly become the Vice President of the United States and vacate his seat, that seat in the U.S. Senate would have to stand for special election to finish the term in the fall of 2026. Okay. And then that seat would be up for its normal term again in 2028. Here's the weird thing that speaks to, because then the senior senator's current seat, which is the one that Kyrsten Sinema is in, would be up in 2030. Now think about the math here. How many times in a row so far
have we had because of the elections?
Because of the timing of Senator McCain's death. Yeah. We are right now at our 5th Senate race in a row. Wow. And it is unprecedented that happened in a state. If Mark Kelly becomes the vice president, because of the ensuing special election and then another 2 regular elections, we will have 8 cycles in a row where Arizona has a U.S. senator on the ballot.
And we could end up in another very strange scenario, which is if Congressman Gallego loses, there would be nothing really to stop the governor from appointing him to the Senate, much in the same way that Ducey did with McSally, and they would serve together. He would serve together with the person he lost to.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would.
How much more bizarre can Arizona politics get?
Well, look, we put the AZ in crazy, right? It's a lot of fun, and I think the fun thing for me is to have a good understanding of the rules and the processes, and watch all of this stuff happen on the outside.
Yeah,
and that to me is what's really fascinating, because the rules and the processes that kind of undergird all of this, they're a little bit complex, but they're not super hard to understand if you kind of pay attention. Mm-hmm. And in most places, you never engage a lot of these odd rules. You never engage the unusual case here or the odd thing that happens there.
Right.
It just kind of plods along.
Yeah.
And so you see these things pop up, and people are like, whoa, no, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And for those of us who understand the rules and the processes, we're like, well, this person does this and that person does that, and this could happen and that could happen. And it's not that complicated for us. But everybody else is just all kind of like hair up in a tussle. And it's fun to watch that too.
If I had more hair, it'd be in a tussle. But it's
you and me are racing for the clear skin up on top.
All right, I'm going to throw one more crazy idea out there, which I don't think has probably a 0.003% chance of happening. Let's say the Supreme Court of the United States says, yes, Kari Lake, and her last gasp now, she's taken this last lawsuit to the Supreme Court. Let's say they say, yep, you won the election, you're now governor. What happens then?
Well,
because she's running for the Senate.
Well, that would be interesting. That would be very interesting, because it would really. Well, I think she might have to resign as governor if she wanted to continue on her campaign to the U.S. Senate, or she would have to withdraw from being a candidate for United States Senate. Now, that's not a scenario that I had thought about, because it's not going to happen. But as unlikely as it is, and you've mentioned that, I think if she was to be declared the winner of the 2022 gubernatorial race, then I think that's what would happen. She would be a sitting governor and a candidate for a federal office. Because she's a state officer, she would have to resign to run. So she would either have to. She's already
running.
She would have to pick.
She'd have to resign before she even took office.
She would have to resign before she got inaugurated.
Wow.
As governor.
Wow.
Because you still have to do the swearing in. Like those little ceremonial swearing in moments.
Oh, yeah, those are
they're
important.
Critical in law.
Yeah.
Right? And they seem kind of hokey, and people are like, oh, just a thing. They have legal effect. They're important. And so, that's an interesting scenario. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to go back to the office now and talk to the lawyers and verify that what I said is accurate.
Yeah,
That's my best guess.
I'm guessing that's probably not the best use of the time of the folks in your office.
Oh, no. We're so busy right now. And I'll tell you what, I have to shout out all the folks in my office now that we mentioned that. Look, this year, just this last 12 months, we've had 3 new political parties. We've got mountains of presidential candidates that are kind of clog up the ballot. We've got an enormous number of initiatives and referenda from the legislature like we've never seen before.
Yeah.
And the initiatives themselves have turned in a record number of signatures that we had people starting on the 4th of July. I had people working on the 4th of July and every single day since then, checking the addresses and the dates on those petitions to find the number of legit signatures that got turned in, so that we can then send those out to the counties to verify that the signature is accurate. So we work closely with the counties on that stuff. So kudos to the team out there, all of the folks who've been working, just pounding away at those keyboards, making that stuff happen, because it is not easy work, and they have been so good. The other thing, too, is we're just barely going to be able to squeeze it out in time. And we don't have any more money or any more time under statute than we've had in the past. So this has been a very, very difficult exercise for my office, and the team over there has just been doing a bang-up job. So kudos to all the folks in the Department of State, especially the election department. And also, you're thinking, why are you wasting my time, Sharpe? I got a lot of work to do right now. No, it's always good to help folks kind of understand things. That's part of the gig.
And I really appreciate it. One last thing, because I got a text. I got a text yesterday, and then my wife forwarded a text from a neighbor who said, can Jim look into this? And it was a text from, I'll just say it's a person who ran for the Phoenix City Council at one point and is a pretty big election denier, basically pointing out all the people who will not have to prove they're citizens who will be voting in Arizona elections. That actually happens, though, but it's because But they'll only be voting on a federal ballot. Can you explain that? The difference between, getting the full Arizona ballot in my precinct and then having a federal only ballot?
So across the entire United States of America, right? Mm-hmm. To register to vote in any state, in any county, in any city in the country, when you sign off on that voter registration form and you declare under penalty of perjury that you are over 18, you're not a convicted felon, or still operating under that restriction, and that you are a U.S. citizen, that's the requirement to vote a full ballot. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. The whole country. Mm-hmm. Everywhere.
Yep.
California, Texas, Illinois, Alaska, that's it. But in Arizona, we made it a little bit tougher to vote in our state and local races. And you have to show what's called documented proof of citizenship to vote down the ballot. Now, why do we have this Fed-only thing? Because our federal offices apply the federal rule that's all of the rest of the country is exactly the same. And then we raise the stakes a little bit, and you have to prove citizenship to vote for a governor, to vote for Secretary of State, for legislature, for all that stuff. That's the difference.
Right.
We have a higher standard and a higher threshold. And what Elon Musk and the rest of these dodos don't understand and are gaslighting their own people,
right,
spreading this lie that we're letting illegal aliens vote, which is abject garbage. We have a higher standard than any other state in the union. And it just, it's a little bit of jelly in my peanut butter when I keep hearing this nonsense over and over again. And you know what? These guys know better. They know better. They're just gaslighting people. They're lying to people to get them to, doubt what all this is doing. And all that does is it helps Russia, it helps China, it helps Iran, because our foreign enemies want us to mistrust one another. They want the election denialists to win because they can't beat us economically, they can't beat us diplomatically, they cannot beat us militarily. The only way our foreign adversaries can beat us is if we're completely divided. And the guys that are lying about something, right? This whoever person you were talking about, they're helping Russia. They're helping China. And I hope they're satisfied. But I'm not going to put up with that nonsense because we do have a much more strict system here in Arizona. We're very proud of the system that we have. Mm-hmm. And there are some people who think it's too strict. And I think that's a fair and reasonable argument to make. But it's the state of the law. We are enforcing the law. And all of the rest of the country has a lower standard than Arizona. And that's the reality. And so I hope these folks can kind of pull their heads from their tuchuses and get on with the program of.
That was a very un-Marine way of saying that, by the way.
Well, I don't know if you guys beep here or something. Your producer's looking at us like.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And one last thought here. If the scenario I threw out there about Kari Lake actually happens, that could be a path to the governorship for you as well.
Oh, is she becomes governor, resigns as governor,
resign, and then you
continue her race for Senate.
Yeah.
You know what? Who knows? All I know is that there are rules and there are unusual things happening, and it's a fun way to help people understand that, this stuff, it looks easy on top, and that's okay. It's supposed to. But there's a whole bunch of stuff going on underneath. Nothing weird is happening except unusual, right?
Right. A lot of unusual.
Yeah.
The AZ and crazy. Right?
Hey.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
Adrian Fontes, appreciate it. Always
happy to be here.
Love having you here.
Thank you.
And be sure to join me for the next AZ Political Podcast. I'm Jim Sharpe.
Thanks for watching the AZ Political Podcast with Jim Sharpe. Click the box to watch more from KTAR News and tap the button in the middle to subscribe.